Hey guys, welcome back to Token Tech. Today I want to talk about the new statement AMD released alongside their CPU release about the new CPUs that aren't out yet, the Zen 3 CPUs. So very quickly, I just want to make clear, I'm not talking about the new Ryzen 3 CPUs that just came out, the 3100 and the 3300X. Those CPUs are supported on basically every motherboard that's out. Now, what I'm talking about is Zen 3. That's their new architecture that's not out yet, that's coming out later this year, second half of this year. And supposedly, according to AMD right now, is only supported on X570 and B550 motherboards, meaning your X470 motherboard, your B450 motherboard, your B350 motherboard, and your X370 motherboard will not support the next generation of Ryzen CPUs. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because a lot of people believed that their motherboard that they bought 2 or 3 years ago would support the new CPUs. And AMD kind of led us on to believe that. They would say multiple times, we're going to support AM4, the socket AM4, all the way through 2020. So Zen 3 will support AM4. That's what they said. And so people took that to believe, well, that must mean that, my X370 motherboard over here, which has an AM4 socket, will be supported. That's not necessarily what they said, but they knew what they were implying, and they knew how people were taking it. They knew that's how people understood it. That's what a lot of people were saying. That's what a lot of reviewers were suggesting. Hey, go buy a B450, and you'll be good, and you'll be able to pop in anything, right? And they never clarified it until now, because they have to, right? And why would you want to hurt sales, before you have to? Okay, because this is not good press. This is negative press right now. So, why is this a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because a lot of people have already invested, right? If you haven't built an AMD system yet, well, now you can go on and to get an X570 motherboard. And to be honest, really, why wouldn't you at this point, except for cost? I understand that. But if you're like me and you invested early and you got yourself an X370 motherboard and you went and you got the best one, the Crosshair 6 Hero, because most people arguably would agree this is the best motherboard for that generation, right? I'm not talking about anything outside of X370 here. You aren't going to get support even though you believed you would, and you invested that money, you invested early, you believed in AMD, and now they are kind of leaving you out to dry. Okay, now in their defense, they did make a slightly good argument, which was BIOS chip size, right? That some are 16 megabytes, some are 32 megabytes, and the fact that the 16 megabyte ones won't be able to fit the BIOS for the new chips, right? The newer chips will not be their BIOS won't be able to fit on the older motherboards. Now, some of the older motherboards do have 32 megabyte chips on them, so they should be able to take it no problem. But I guess they're trying to avoid the market confusion of, well, these boards work, but those boards don't. So just giving a flat, absolute statement of X570 or 500 series boards and above will work and everything else won't is easier for the less knowledgeable consumer. I get that. But when you're going around for years saying we're going to support AM4 through Zen 3, AM4 through Zen 3, AM4 through Zen 3, well, you're kind of giving off that impression that, well, if I buy a board today, or if I buy a cheaper board today, it will work with the newer chips, and that just isn't the case. Now, some people I've noticed are taking this quite lightly, and they're like, oh, well, that's what they said before with Zen 2 and X370, and look, it supports it, and it supports it in a sort of kind of way, where it does support it up to a point with beta BIOSes, okay? And that's basically because the community outraged about it, all right? So that's the purpose of this video. I'm not doing this because I have any special information to add to this conversation. I'm doing this because I'm voicing my opinion. I'm letting you guys and AMD know that I do not like this decision. I think there could be a way for you guys to figure this out, to have a cut down BIOS or a bare bone BIOS, or to leave out just features on older motherboards. Just be like, hey, you can use them in older motherboards, but to get all of the performance and get all of the features that you're paying for, you might as well upgrade to a new motherboard, because maybe you do that down the line, right? Maybe you do that later, or maybe you don't care about those features and you just want the chip, right? Depending on what features are cut, of course, right? Or just have a better way of coding it. Again, I don't know all the details, right? I'm not a software engineer, but I feel like there's a way that they could make it work. And again, this isn't up to the motherboard manufacturers. I've seen people online make comments that, well, motherboard manufacturers will be able to do whatever they want, right? They'll be able to kind of port it over and you'll be able to use it on your 400 series board. But if AMD does not give the okay, if AMD does not give the Giza update to them, then it's just not going to work. Okay. And at this point in time, with the way AMD is, they have that ability and they have the the market share to be able to say to their partners and say, nope, you can't do that, and that's just the way it is. Okay. And to be fair, motherboard manufacturers probably aren't too upset about this either, because that means they're going to sell more of their more expensive X570 and B550 boards when those come out later this year as well. Those aren't even out yet. Okay. Now, again, I kind of understand them, and technically speaking, they never said X370 will be compatible with Zen 3. They just said AM4 will be compatible. They never said X470 will be compatible. They said AM4 will be compatible. So technically they're not wrong. They're still using AM4, but it's a new motherboard, obviously, well, new motherboard last year, the X570 chipset. And this really does hurt that value aspect, that value conversation people always had, which is, do I go Intel or do I go AMD? And people would always say, well, on AMD, you can buy a cheap motherboard, you can buy a cheap CPU today, or a decent motherboard and a cheap CPU today, and then a year or two or down the line, you can then pick up a better CPU, drop it in, and boom, you have a lot more performance. Or, you can go ahead and get something used later down the line, and boom, you have much more performance, right? And now that's not the case. If you bought an X470 motherboard thinking, hey, this is a good value, and it's a good board, because a lot of them are great boards, and you bought yourself a cheaper, older CPU or what have you, thinking, I'm going to wait until Zen 3 comes out and I'm going to upgrade and have the best possible chip that this motherboard supports, right? Well, you can't do that anymore. You can barely do that with Zen 2. So essentially, all of us who still have older motherboards, the highest we can go is the 3950X. And to be fair, today at least, that is a crazy high-end option. That's still a really amazing chip. But you are still limited to there. Where there are going to be new chips, they are going to support AM4, but they're not going to support your 400 and 300 series boards, which really, really sucks. And of course, AMD does this the way every company would do this. I'm not knocking them for it, but just stating, they said this alongside something really good, which was the Ryzen 3, the 3100 and the 3300X launch. And all those reviews are so good and so positive, and everyone wants to talk about those, hoping that not everyone talks about the whole motherboard thing, right? A lot of companies do this. They'll do this. It's just a publicity thing to do, right? That you don't want to give bad news on a Monday, and you don't want to do that just by itself, because then everyone's going to be talking about just that bad news. Okay. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Is this really a big deal? I think it is. Maybe you guys don't. It ruins the value aspect, or partially ruins the value aspect of the chips. And I do agree with Paul from Not an Apple Fan, and I agree with everyone else who's not happy with this statement. But let me know down below what you think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.